Welcome back to Redhawk Media. Today we're taking a look at making a 2D platform game. This is something that I've been tinkering with the last couple of years, and I have to say that it's a compilation of a number of different tutorials that I myself went through. I'm not responsible for making the code by any means, but I think it's good to give credit where credit is due, and the credit would be Flash Game Development Tutorials. They put together a great tutorial. My one problem with the tutorial is that it didn't have sound with it, which sometimes makes it difficult to follow. That's what I'm going to add on basically to the tutorial here, and I'm actually going to be using the code from that they generated. So I want to give credit where credit is due. It's awesome. It's been great to learn how to make this 2D game with a number of different elements. If you wanted to get an idea of what we're looking at for the 2D game for today's segments, it's going to be a multi-part segment here, but we are putting together the character and the ground today and show you how to put the code in for the character so that you can move and jump the character. So let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. I'm going to switch over to this, and here is our current character and a very simple ground that the character is on, and I'm moving this with the arrow keys right now. So you can see there's a bit of gravity here. We can jump, we can move around, and unfortunately you can fall off. Right now nothing happens, so when you do that, that'll be one of the parts coming up. Let's go ahead and start this and take a look at how it's done. I'm going to go up and go to a new document here, new Flash document. And what we're going to be working with, which will be different from before in our earlier projects, is we're working with ActionScript 2.0. Okay, and if we're going to be exporting this to like a mobile device or something like that, this is where I would go ahead and tinker with some of the settings here. For instance, 960 by 540 is a pretty traditional height and width for a mobile phone, or even for an iPad. Pixels would work out pretty well for that. So I've got that set up, and I click OK. All right, I've got my new document here, and the first thing that I'm going to do in here is I'm going to create a couple of layers, 3 to be exact. 1, 2, 3. There we go, and let's go ahead and name these layers, which they will all have a part to play coming up in the near future of this multi-part series here. Ground is going to be this one. The first one was vcam, then we've got ground, and on the uppermost layer we're going to put character. Now capitalization and all that doesn't matter on your layers here. It will come into play a little bit later. Okay, go ahead and enter, and we're going to start on this very first frame for the character. We're going to make a very simple character because this isn't a tutorial that's focusing on animation. It's a tutorial that's focusing on more of how you can actually develop a game out of this. So I'm going to go ahead and just work with the same exact character that you saw before, which was a red ball. So I'm going to hold shift here. I've got my oval tool. I've got a red fill and a black outline, and I go ahead and draw the ball here. Now the one thing I'm going to add in so it gives a little bit of directionality is I'm going to grab my paintbrush really quick, put the fill to black, and I'm just going to add on this little line here that indicates, I don't like that, let's do it a little bit further over, right about here. Okay, just kind of indicates which way we're going. That's my character. That's all there is to it. Now I'm going to go ahead with the pointer tool and select all of this. Make sure that you get all of it, including the stroke weight around the outside, and then I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to go to convert to symbol, and we're going to leave it as a movie clip, and I'm going to call this character. Again, in this part, caps does not matter, but this does. The registration is the part that is going to interact with everything. So the bottom of the ball is going to interact with its environment here. That's what I want to have happen. So I put the registration on the bottom, and I click OK. Now I've got this symbol on the first frame of the character layer. Okay. Next thing I've got to do is in order for this to work with the code that we're pasting in, we have to give it an instance name. Now over in the Properties tab here, if you're not seeing Properties, you can go up to Window, make sure that Properties is checked. But in the Properties tab, wherever it may be in your layout, I go ahead and type in CHAR. Now this time, caps does matter, so I don't want to capitalize any of this. It's all going to be lowercase. CHAR is referring to character. It's got to be exactly that, otherwise the code will not work. That's just my caution to throw out there right now. Okay, and now we're on to the next thing here. We're going to go ahead and start creating the ground. We need something to interact with here. And I'm going to change up my colors on this a little bit because black was a little bit crazy. And we're going to go with a green fill and then kind of a darker green outline. And the rectangle tool will fit fine here. Now, this is, if you have time, where you can get a little bit more creative, because let's say we want more of like a picture ground that we want the ball to settle on. That would be my time to bring in some JPEGs into my library tab, drag those on as the ground segments that I would be jumping to. I'm showing you just the basics, but I would expect that you're going to customize this however you want. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw the ground. This is the starting point here. And let's go ahead and just draw that out like so. All right, now grab my selector tool or the pointer tool, and I'm going to select just the ground here. And maybe we just lock the character layer. We grab this, okay, and it's just the ground is selected. I go ahead and right click on it, and again I'm going to create a symbol. Okay, this time I'm going to call it ground. Okay, and the thing that I'm going to change this time is the registration. I want the registration to be dead center in the middle, and I want it to be a movie clip. And I click OK. Now, we've got a piece of ground here. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing we did with the character. We're going to give it an instance name, and we're going to type in ground, all lowercase. Again, this has to be exactly the same exact way, otherwise it will not work. Okay, now, in order to go in and add more ground on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on the ground piece here. So I double click on that, and now you can see I'm in a new timeline. I'm no longer in scene 1, I'm actually in the ground movie clip timeline. And this is a great place where I can go ahead and start duplicating pieces of the ground to add on. So I can go ahead and add this. I'm going to just highlight that and Command C it, and then I'm going to go ahead and Command V that and move it around here. And then we'll Command V that, move that around. Okay, Command V, keep coming up with pieces, and we're going to start running out of room here pretty quick, which is going to take us into our second part of the tutorial, which I'll explain a little bit later here. Let's say we've got a big gap that we've got to jump here. And we'll have to experiment on the gaps here depending on the gravity that's set on the ball. Okay, so in the movie clip for the ground, again it should say scene 1 ground, I've created all the ground layers here, and now I'm going to go back to scene 1, okay, and I have to add on one thing to make this all work. I'm going to unlock my character layer, I'm going to click back on that first frame for the character so that the character is selected. I can tell that it's a symbol because of the blue rectangle around the outside, and I'm going to go ahead and right click on this, and I'm going to go to Actions. Now, in Actions is where we're going to actually take that code that was created by the Flash Tutorials people here, and I'm going to bring that up. And this will be also included in my description, but again, I did not write this code. I cannot take credit for the code. It was created by the people of Flash Game Development Tutorials. They do an awesome job at this. And Command C, copy that. Come back on over to Flash. First line here in my actions, I'm going to paste it in there. Now do make sure that you've got all of the code, including those two little brackets at the end here to complete the code snippet. Okay, and I've got all that. It's already added in. I go ahead and close, and now I've got everything that I'm going to do for this particular part here. So I've got a character, I've got the ground, now we just want to test it. So I go up to Control, I'm going to go to Test Movie, and then I go to Test. Alright, and we've got the ball. Now, using the arrow keys here as the way to enter this, and the up arrow to jump, I can go ahead and tinker around with this. Now, here's the kind of stuff that you're going to run into not knowing the limitations of your character. So I'm testing this out, and I realize, wow, he's never going to make that jump in a million years unless I lower the gravity or I lower that block. So I have to make this a little bit more adjustable so that I can go ahead and get to that. There's one other problem still, or there's a bunch of problems actually with this first part. I can move the character, but there's no way to restart the game, and I don't have a scrolling feature on yet so that the camera will actually follow the ball. Okay, that's the next part that we're going to be working on here. To begin with, come up with a creative set of ground, come up with a good character, put your code snippet in place here, and then customize the ground so that when you test it, it actually works. And that's what we're looking at for today. Okay, thanks again for joining us. Another episode of Red Hawk Media. Bye.